Oh, that's great. That's great. So we're formally starting our collaborate session 3, and I just have you know that I'm actually recording this from now on. Now I will be the only voice talking. I'm being a woman, I'm used to it. Um, but that's because the student we have on thank you, doesn't have a mic. So okay, so you've listened to some of them. Now before we actually get me talking and focusing continuously on assignment 1, um, Elizabeth, do you have some questions? If you can type some questions, I will be talking because the video is scrolling, so I just sort of will talk. Not at the moment. Okay. How are you going with the assignment? Did you actually did you have a look at the assignment itself? You have a pretty good idea what is required? Obviously, if you listen to the collaborate sessions, you probably do have an idea what's required, but I'm just asking. Have a good think though and understand. Okay. Now, this is the secret of the trade. It takes me seconds or minutes to know what grade I give to someone's portfolio. So I open someone's website and literally within seconds, I know what grade I will give. Now, why do you think this is the case? And I'm passing it on to you so that you start developing sort of higher order skills regarding what assignments should look like and how they construct it. I mean, this is gonna be no traps, no hidden secrets here. I am just letting you know so that you can organize your assignments for the best impact. So how come that I can open an assignment and without reading fully word by word, I know exactly pretty much what grade I will give literally within seconds. What do you think it is? What do you think what skills do I use or what is happening that I literally within very short time I know what grade the student will get, and then I might still look for detail, but I know it pretty much almost within a very short time the grade. So if I have 100 students in the unit, it is not going to take me 3 weeks to assess. Criteria obvious. Well, I have criteria. The criteria are for you. I know exactly what the portfolio should include. Portfolio on literacy and on your experiences. I know exactly what it should look like and include. So we had to write them out for you and therefore dig them out of our own thinking, what should be actually passed on to the student. But inside of us as lecturers, we actually know what to expect. So criteria I have, yes, but just to give you a secret, every assignment that students do has pretty much only one point of difficulty. And it's usually the one that nobody answers, right? So whether we do assignment 1 and assignment 2, there will be a point of difficulty that I will be looking for. And obviously I'll be looking at whether you have references inside of your text and also references at the end of PowerPoint. Well, that takes me 2 seconds. I just glance and I say. I will also look whether you have pages inside of your references because I need a proof that the student actually read or saw a video or something. I just need a bit more precise. I need to see a range of the material you have covered. I'm not really hot on textbooks, so if you read some textbooks, that's great. If you read materials from the modules, that's even better. Videos are great. The archived videos are fantastic. That's why they are there. But there's a point of difficulty in the assignment 1. There's a point of difficulty in assignment 1, which is most important, and it is your your perspective on literacy, what literacy actually is. This is so important because according to your view of literacy, you will organize or discuss or argue the points in your portfolio differently. So if you say literacy is about recognizing letters, then you say I can recognize letters in the newspaper, in the book, or blah. But if you say that there are higher order skills involved, and you can actually show how you can, your versatility in the use of higher order skills, and don't forget, they're not just only critical thinking, although that's the key one. Because if you have critical thinking, you should also know that you will need to actually use them in order to network, in order to build teams, because nobody is an island and nobody can do everything by themselves. Some sort of creative things, being able to do things, left field, different things. So I will be looking how you actually can articulate how can you actually express the concept of literacy through your profile in the way that shows that you actually understand the range of requirements that the literate person can actually cover. And I'll be looking at the range. And it takes me literally, in an undergraduate assignment, it takes me seconds to know whether the student covers the range or not. An assignment that doesn't cover a range basically produces lists. And that's not exactly an argument. A list is not an argument. So there, for assignment 1. Now, I don't know, are we in module 2? I think we're going to module 2, which I believe is what is text. I'm not sure, but one of those modules will be what is text. I'm just gonna have a look. Right. So, Elizabeth, have you read anything in module 2 regarding or seen the archive lectures? I cannot argue enough or convince you enough to watch archived lectures. And archived lectures you will find on the discussion board. There's a whole forum with archived lectures. You have to watch them. They are the best lectures I have actually managed to saved, and they go from semester to semester. I change them, so these ones which you have there online are probably from winter semester. But yeah, I can't urge you enough to watch them. And they have PowerPoints attached to them, so the PowerPoints will give you a bit of an overview of what's happening in the video. So yeah, that's great. Now, when it comes to extensions, please, anyone, whoever is listening to this video, all I care about that we actually managed to somehow put everything together and submit all the assignments within the times of a summer semester. So if you are a week left or right, I don't really care. So don't send me 300 emails because you'll be 3 days late. I mean, I don't really care about 3 days. I do care when it's 3 months, but when it's 3 days or 1 week, just keep submitting them on LearnLine. Now, so I understand that, everybody is catching up. So the point is, when you actually watch the stuff about what is text, I would strongly urge you to watch, to read the thing that I have produced about what is text and see. And I know that when you have a novice mind, then the things which to me are simple in this text or any other PowerPoint I might have included there are not simple for a person who sees these things the first time. So now the difference between a high distinction and a credit and pass is how much time do you give to reflect on the ideas in those lectures or PowerPoints or texts. And the key point, one of the key points in the module 1, and what do you think, Elizabeth, can you suggest one of the key points in module 1 or in anything we have said so far in this unit? What has grabbed you the most, or what do you think is a key point around which you shouldn't forget and around which you might have to actually produce your assignments? What would be the key point, the focus point, like the things that you actually think, oh, well, yeah, this is important? Exactly. Now, it's really easy for a teacher, and it's called the teacher's illness or syndrome, when we would want all the kids to have the same height, the same age, probably the same ponytails, and think the same, act the same, and behave the same. It ain't gonna happen. That's why I put up this PowerPoint today on differences. we don't have it in our learning materials for many reasons. I wonder what year it was written. 2008, but I only found out about it this year. But and I'll come back to it. Exactly, the differences are the most important thing, because the teacher does a number of things, and first one wants to train students how to read, whatever this may mean, but definitely how to understand the text. And that's a no, because we're training them to one version of working with the text. And we need to actually think about it a little bit differently. So if well, we need to reflect a little bit on what it means to teach literacy, and whether we should ever get to a point where we actually train children how to comprehend a text. I mean, imagine training people to how to comprehend Chopin or how to comprehend some poetry. What do you do today in your creative class? Today in our creative English class, we're training children how to understand a poem. Oh, yes. What about the diversity of inner experiences that they might bring into it? Well, that's different. We first train them and then we tell them they don't have to think this way. Well, that's a kind of schizoic. Well, that's the job of a teacher, right? Anyway, point is, it's kind of sick in my view. So the idea of the diversity is absolutely a key. So one reading that I strongly recommend is Aukerman. So in this reading and in another reading I have from her from which she published last year, or actually this year, I think she submitted last year, but it will be published this year somewhere in the Journal of Reading or something in the States. I've got the paper. But even if you read only the one that she has here, she talks about dialogic and monologic classroom. In this paper, when she talks about who's afraid of the big bad answer, she might not be mentioning those terms, dialogic and monologic, but you can actually guess that whatever she writes in this paper we have online, she actually means these terms. And dialogic will be when students actually can interact with the text and with each other. And there's one thing that she doesn't say, but we will get as we go through the course. So dialogic will be the one when we actually give children a possibility to creatively work with the text. And monologic is when we beat children to obedience. And I have no better word for it. Right? I would love to be a little bit more polite and circumventional about it, but unfortunately, there is no better way of explaining it, because it does a lot of damage to children. And as we actually beat them to one meaning, one text, one meaning, what happens then, those children who are more sensitive, who have imagination, and a bit more, maybe, I don't know, gentle or something, we actually train them to start losing confidence in themselves, because they saw something else, they felt something else. We tell them they should be doing something else with this text, and then obviously the teacher is right, so therefore children actually lose their sense of capacity or self-efficacy. And once they do, we have a problem. So yes, dialogic, monologic classroom. So please read that paper by Aukerman, Who is Afraid of the Big Bad Answer. Very important on the different ways in which teachers can work with text. And of course, and in a way, I will be definitely emphasizing the point that I'm going to make now throughout the course. It's very, very important, but I don't think that Aukerman makes it, because she still comes from the American culture, which is a little bit stuck with, what do they call them? You know, a little bit stuck with content, although she tries to escape from it and so on. But what she doesn't mention is the role of the bigger world, you know, the role of the world inside of her classroom. In her classroom, there's still students talking to each other. Yeah, I noticed that, Elizabeth, but that's okay. So in in Ockerman, all is cool, and in Ockerman's work is worth reading. But as we go through this course, we will be actually looking at how we can actually bring the external world into the classroom, so we don't actually just have a classroom with a teacher and students. I mean, there's a world out there, and literacy is about engaging the world. It's not about structuring relationships between teachers and students only. So as Elizabeth keeps having connection problems, what I might do is signal to you the relevance of this particular text that I have here. So that's one slide, and then there's another slide that basically is the same article. I want you to read for yourselves these particular paragraphs, because they really make the point that meaning making is not about getting from the teacher the meaning of text, of the meaning of words. What it is, it's about children or people interacting with the world and structuring their literacy experience accordingly to these interactions. Hi, Elizabeth, I see that you're back in the room. So what I was saying is that please read Ockerman, and then throughout the semester we will be looking at how to actually bring the big wild world into the classroom, so that children learn to be literate for the purpose of acting in the world in an informed way, not necessarily just being stuck with one another in the classroom. So that's one thing with Ockerman. Now, on the point of differences, I brought this specific PowerPoint, and with quotations from a paper by a very, very, very famous neuroscientist whose name is Antonio Damasio, and he's here looking at the concept of learner-centeredness in relation to psychology and also in relation to neuroscience. And here he makes very good points about that individual exists in that the individual exists in a continually changing world, which means one's identity is continuously being reconstructed, reorganized as they go through experiences. And what he's saying here, by drawing on psychology and neuroscience, he's giving us a few quotes. I have more of them, so anyone who wants this paper, I might actually upload it somewhere. Maybe I'll just attach it to the announcements with the video, but you don't have to read it. All I want to make is the point as follows. Individuals, when they approach text, they approach it from the perspective of their history, and that history is an emotional history, because in order to actually be able to cope with complexities of the big world, everything that we might be codifying in language, in order to be deeply integrated in our behavior and in our cognition, we actually translate it into more primitive or older structures in our brain and body, and these deal with emotions. So the social world does not have a special part in the brain. It actually is written on our limbic system, on our brain system. So what he is saying here is that whether children or people, when they actually approach situations or engage in a learning context, they actually draw on these emotions, and then these emotions actually help them to make deeper connections with the new context. And if they engage on a sufficiently rich basis in an activity, then they will be rewriting, reconstructing these emotional systems that they have in the limbic system. Why am I mentioning this? I'm mentioning this to just make a point that individual counts, that we cannot just tell children read this text and memorize this meaning because this is the meaning of the lion and the mouse story. It doesn't work like this, and that literacy is not about coding behavior and somehow encoding it into children. And if you so literacy teaching is not about programming children. In this situation you do this, in this situation you do this, in this situation you do this, because for 12 years of schooling that would be one long program. What it is about providing sufficiently complex activities and support so that children as a result can reorganize the way they respond in these activities. So our aim is for children to continuously respond on an increasingly informed basis. Elizabeth, keep writing comments as I'm talking because that will give me some feedback. So as I talk, you can actually write at the same time. It's fine. And I'll hold it here, my point, because that's good enough to actually remember. And for anyone who's watching this video on YouTube, please rewind the point I just made. For assignment 1, what we need to do is to actually understand the complexity of what a literate behavior is. It's not just about writing your name, it's about being able to draw on powerful behaviors, on powerful ways of on knowledge that actually enables you to act in to exert a desired impact on others. So you use different signs and written text, pictures, music, your even organization of the body, which is kinesthetics. All of that actually is form of writing on other people in order for them to understand how you actually understand what you want to say or what you want to actually pass on to them. So there's a complexity of signs that students draw on, and in order for our students to know how to draw, to know the signs and to know how to draw on them, they need complex activities. But in order to act in these complex activities, they will need complex support from us. And that's the key to a good literacy class. It cannot be simple and it cannot simplify, because if it is simple and if it simplifies, at the end of the day what we get is simple students. What we need is to create activities which enable our students to deal with complex things, because life is complex, texts are complex things, meanings are complex systems. There's nothing simple about anything. And we want our children to actually do what the curriculum says, which means be able to do the complex higher order, to engage those higher order skills embedded in general capabilities. And they include critical thinking, ethical stance, emotional, and all of these other things. So we want our children to be networkers, team builders, we want them to be critical, creative, we want them all of these things. And these are complex skills, and they can only emerge from complex activities. If we simplify, we reduce our children to monkeys. We don't add. This is for some reason this 19th century thinking keeps somehow coming up in education, and I don't know when there will be an end to it. Learning is not an additive process. It's a process involving reorganization. I very often simplify it in a sense to my students to give it actually I think this way, but you know how when the child is born, a child can learn any language on the planet. By the age of 18 months, it's becoming a little bit more difficult. And by the age of 11 years, it becomes increasingly difficult. So the theory I have is that when we get born, we know everything. And then socialization is a process that focuses us on particular systems. So what the child doesn't actually the learning process is not an additive process. It's actually a process of reorganizing the systems we have. So we very often use the phrase whereby we say we draw on. We draw on, but every time we draw on what we know, we reorganize what we know. And start creating increasingly powerful cognitive systems in our brains. Right? So it's not an added, it adds history, that is true. I will agree with it that it adds history. I'm just only pointing that adding history is it's a good way of putting it, but I just don't want you to think that learning is an additive process. It's a reorganization. So students are historical beings, and in the process of interactions, they increase that history. They add or they expand the histories, their own histories. So keep making the history with the children, yes. We keep them finding ways to interact with the world. Right. That's exactly the point. So we don't have to actually keep them finding ways to interact because they are already involved in the world. When they leave a school, they actually have a life out there. So what we need to do is to actually, as teachers, think of ways in which we can support them in their current interactions in the world, right? In their community, in the things that add to their lives today. We don't have to invent a separate life for them. Right, Elizabeth, for your sake, because you just came back, you keep on coming in and out, dropping connection. So this is true. We keep them finding ways to interact with the world. It is true. But in order now, again, to clarify, we don't invent a third world for them. They already live in the world. They have parents or not. They have some guardians. They have some community around them. They have particular needs. They have interests. And what we should do is work with them so that they can see that literacy can support or enhance their interactions with the world as they know it. And we will be looking at it, how to do it for assignment 2. But these are the sort of things I want to say, rather than say, oh, well, here's your mother and here's your father and here's your uncle and there's your community, but here is a different world and here we study abstract concepts. Can we actually, in order to make these literacy classes we actually conduct, what they call in textbooks meaningful or relevant to children, and we don't have to make them meaningful or relevant. What we can show to children is that in order to do what they already do, but in an enhanced way, they can actually use the tools of literacy. So whatever they do at home, they can create a book about it. Whatever they interests them or whatever stories they create, they can produce an audiobook and send the audiobook to an aged care center for all the people to listen to. Whatever they do as sports or whatever they do as whatever, they can actually create a PowerPoint with little pictures of themselves, drawing them and maybe putting names or whatever. We can create a lot of things. We can create a class book and send it to children in Japan, right? So there's a lot of things that they already live. Yes, that's what people call it, being authentic and all of that. Absolutely. I just, as you can see, that I'm old enough to have now actually managed to leave all that vocabulary because these words have been snatched by so many people and meaning so many different things that I just basically explain my terms. I don't use metaphors, because if I use metaphors like authentic, then someone just puts something underneath it that surprises me. But yes, that's what I mean. So the kids have a life, and the literacy tools are to actually enable children to enhance their participation in their life, not create a new life for them, right? So they have a school life, which is completely abstract and divorced from the life they live on a daily basis. And consequently, they don't know how to connect it. And we make it confusing. And that might be okay for children who are used to that abstract game. But a lot of us are working with children who are not used to this abstract game, and even more so in when we work with children with Aboriginal communities, where people actually have very strong community ties and a very strong local life, and they have absolutely no commitment to white literacy. And we then basically blame them, and we invent methods, and we invent punishments for these people to do this and that, but we never ask ourselves what can we change about our own practice in order to actually for literacy not to be a promise for a better life, but actually to show to children that it actually can enhance their current life. So yes, so we base the literacy experiences, you say, Elizabeth, on the sociocultural experience, socio-historical, social, cultural, and historical experience. Historical, I often call it socio-historical because it's a little bit different concept from academia. Socio-historical actually says that it's socially embedded, but it is also historical, which means relates to an individual. Right, so I don't talk about sociocultural, that's actually Russian Marxism. What I'm talking about is socio-historical. And by socio-historical, what we actually combine in one word is the concept of history as individual and the concept of social, whereby the history was shaped within the context of social interaction. Socio-historical, I refer to it. But the idea of a socio-historical appears in post-structuralism. That's actually quite old too, but for some reason the term didn't make it into education. Somehow education got stuck in the 50s or even earlier with Vygotsky in 1925. Never mind, we're here to actually go forward a little bit. So yeah, we want these social and experiences actually to be the context of children's learning, not some abstract context that we invent in our literacy classes, and then we put children on the mat and we look at the big book and we make them understand the words, and it's no different than it was done in the 19th century. So we will be looking at all of that. At this very moment, this is our third collaborate, so I just wanted to clarify the assignment and started to actually broaden your scope of thinking how much is involved in the context of literacy teaching or literacy pedagogy. Now we might want to actually define what pedagogy is. Pedagogy, what's that little thing? Now, before you answer, Elizabeth, and I'm sure you come up with an answer, one thing of a bad definition is tautological definition. And tautology means circular. It means saying the same thing just with different words. So pedagogy are teaching activities. Well, that's a dictionary definition. Has nothing to do with actually what the objective of pedagogy is. So if we want to actually define pedagogy, we have to define it by a process of sorts. So what process? How could, I mean, Elizabeth, you're the only one today on, I don't know why, maybe because Christmas is coming shortly. Typically we have more students on the collaborate. So what do you think? How could we define pedagogy? If you don't define, I will define. But yeah, it's not instruction, it's not activities for instruction, because that's circular and it's kind of confusing. because teaching is not instruction. That's an American term, and it's also from the 19th century. Um, so what would we say? That pedagogy will be about enhancement, right? So enhancing what? Participation, right? Enhancing participation in the big world, and with the support of tools enabling children or students to do what? To find answers to their own questions. Now, you're not going to find it anywhere in any textbooks because it's a modern definition of pedagogy, and it is Anja Lyon. Right? That's why I say to you, don't rely on textbooks, because they're all then written by linguists usually, and they don't think about these things. So pedagogy, we support children in enhancing their participation in the big world in the context of their interaction. We do that with tools, activities, right, which enable children to find answers to their own questions. So how do I answer now? How do I do that? How do you do it? And they not only enable children to find answers, they also challenge students for that also challenge students so that they can re-examine the I'll just tell you how I call it in my academic words, and then we can actually talk about it. So they can challenge students. These are some of the activities also have to challenge. They have to be demanding so that students feel challenged, so they can re-examine what I call the terms on which they act. You know, the beliefs on which they act. So the activities, the support very often is structured in a way that actually challenges students' beliefs about the situation in which they are. So you go to a shop in the States, as an adult, I can't think of children, but you go to a shop in the States and you think you'll go there and you'll pick up this from the, you buy this or that, and all of a sudden you have someone opening you a door, and this person is dressed in the evening suit. You walk in and there are other things happening. In fact, everybody is walking dressed elegantly and so on. And all of a sudden, because the inside of the shop and the outside of the shop smells and spells elegance, all of a sudden you are challenged to actually re-examine your behaviors in shops and see that not every shop is a shop, and not in every shop you behave differently. So the context of the shop challenged you. And the same with pedagogy. The kind of tools we provide, tools or activities or strategy, we can talk about it in these terms. So strategies, tools or activities, all of these are designed to challenge children's thinking about the context in which they are. And as we challenge them, we support them in this way in reorganizing their systems and finding answers, in reorganizing their systems, because now they have to actually find answers. How else can we behave? What else can I do here? What else can I do here? So we actually don't give them answers. We challenge them sufficiently so that they can find answers of their own. And it's a very different way of thinking of pedagogy. It's not very different. It's just that it's more clear. I think a lot of textbooks talk about this pedagogy, but they can't really explain it. So you find these terms like authentic or meaningful, or I don't know, whatever they have there. But it doesn't actually say how. And through modules, I think 3, 4, and so on, especially from after we finish assignment 1, we will be then going into exactly how to create these challenging how to insert those challenging activities, so that children can play with these challenges, and these challenges help them to reorganize how they see reality and consequently find answers to their own questions and therefore act on an increasingly informed basis. Very much modern pedagogy, very much away from a pedagogy which pedagogies of the past, which are not pedagogies, they're basically training. It's like train a doggy. Say A, bravo, you said A. Now say B, and so on. There is room for that in what I am saying, but techniques of this kind will need to be built in or embedded in a larger context of things, so that we don't actually turn everything into what I call a monkey game. I say you do, I say you do, I say you do, right? So that's how you work with doggies. It's not how you work with human beings, because you want human beings to have capacities. You don't want them to have to just reproduce. And then a question happens that you didn't actually make them memorize, and they are lost. So as I said it in Taiwan at the conference, we want children, we can train children to do the recall, just like we train, so we can train children on tests that require from them short memory and recall, but that will not produce children who can build airplanes, right? And what we want is children who are actually able to act and behave in complex situations and manage complex sets of information. So again, our support, in order for our support to be meaningful to children, what we do, we don't give them answers. We provide them with tools, strategies, or activities that challenge what they think, and therefore they can reorganize what they think, and as a result, or in the process, ask themselves questions and find answers to their own questions. The outcome will be they act on an increasingly informed basis. And that's a pedagogy of the 21st century in one sentence. And I will love to see that in your PowerPoint or presentations or whatever you produce, portfolios or whatever it is. It's a core of everything we will be doing in this unit. And I don't think I have ever said it better. So there we go. All right, Elizabeth, we've been now on for 45 minutes. Elizabeth, do you have any questions? Did you understand a little bit? Okay. So, a pedagogy, the kind of pedagogy I'm talking about, we all practice, in fact. It's just that when we actually have to do it as teachers and be paid money for it, we will do it a little bit more thoroughly and a little bit better. But the pedagogy of this kind is what we think, what we do when we actually ask someone questions like, so why did you do that? And what made you think that? And where did you see it done? Have you seen it done differently? And was the same effect? What made you think that it was the same effect? Have you seen any other ways? What kind of a person was the person who did it differently? Do you think that this person actually had any idea or have any idea that it might have impacted the other people in a way that they didn't intend? And so on. So there's lots of questions about context, basically scrutinizing the context so that the child can look at the same situation in more than one ways, and consequently build a bigger picture, and consequently builds richer neural networks in the head, and consequently develops these networks are so rich that they write themselves on their emotional structures, and all of a sudden they start embedding those lessons inside of them, and they become educated, they become broad, they start having a range, a cognitive and social range. You see, but they can't have that range unless we do this exploratory work with them. If all they see is a lion and a mouse for 5 weeks, they go crazy. They walk out from our class and we think they're just misbehaving. And honestly, we are just not doing the job. So that kind of exploratory, challenging environment will be what we will be learning to do in this unit. Okay, Elizabeth, I might leave it for now so that everybody who is watching this video can rewind it and rewatch it without it becoming a 3-hour lecture. Okay, so we will progress to something else next week. I was thinking of inviting a PhD student of mine. She just finished a master's. She's a teacher in a local Darwin school, and we might give her a few minutes to talk with you about how she is looking at her teaching now after having done the master's at CDU. So I'll give her some time with you, so you might ask her some questions and so on. We'll see. I've never done that, so I have no idea what will happen, but we might just let her loose on you and see how the interaction develops. She's been working with 5-year-olds for quite a while now, but she's still young. So she has experience. She loves her 5-year-olds. So I think having a little bit of a discussion with a practicing teacher and a research student would be of value in this unit. We'll see. We'll see. If it's not of value, I'll never bring her again. All right, Elizabeth, I'll record it. I'll put it now on YouTube and I'll see you next week. Thank you very much for making it. Thank you.